All right, welcome to the Hosea 4 verse 6 podcast. I got a special guest with me. I got Dr. Owen Brown. Dr. Owen Brown is a professor of sociology in the Department of Social and Behavior Sciences at Medgar Evers College. Medgar Evers College is a senior college in the City University of New York system. He has written numerous peer-reviewed articles and has secured over $12 million in grants for funding for the college program serving underrepresented populations living in central Brooklyn. He has presented papers at Columbia University's Women's Seminar Series. Owen is also a member of the Editorial Board for the Journal on Race and Policy. Finally, he is working on a book, The Awakening, Women of African Ancestry Who Lived Freed, or Enslaved into the Making of America. And he also written an op-ed, Let's Smile, Lie, and Murder. I enjoyed that op-ed. And he's also my professor in my first year of college in Sociology 101. Welcome to the show, Dr. Brown.
Thank you, my brother. And before we start, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to be a part of your show. It's very important, and it's the ancestors smiled down on me that here is a young man who life I've touched and who's touching so many other lives. And that's the way I was brought up, and that's the way we need to bring our children up.
Absolutely. The ancestors come in many ways. They pass down from generation to generation. But Dr. Owen Brown, your name is similar to the name of John Brown, son, Owen Brown, and John Brown is a passionate abolitionist who fought against slavery. What about sociology interests you that made you study it for so long and teach it?
Well, I tell you, I remember when I first went off to college at Binghamton University, I wanted to become a psychologist. And unfortunately, I ran into a lot of headwinds in that area. And somehow, my second semester, freshman year, I had the opportunity to take a sociology course. My second sociology course with Dr. Dale Talmadge. And Dale was inspiring. He was uplifting, and he inspired me to become a sociologist. And along with Dale, I had the opportunity to speak with to learn from Dr. Terrence Hopkins, God rest his soul, who really helped and guided and molded me as a graduate student to pursue a PhD in sociology. And what I love about sociology is that it has taught me how to understand the physical space within which we live. And the sociology program I went through at Binghamton University was unusual. It was not the traditional sociology program, because at one time I wanted to go to Brown University to study sociology, or Columbia University to study sociology. And their sociology program was pretty much conservative, pretty much traditional. And the exposure that I got at Binghamton really shaped me to understand a lot of issues and questions that I had as a young man in high school. One of those issues that still burns bright in my head was, I remember me and my friends, we were walking on the rails of a railroad track in Suffolk County, Long Island. I remember thinking to myself, where will all of us be in 20 years? And why is it that out of all my friends, it was only two of us who graduated from high school? So when I came to college, that was a question, or those were questions that were illuminated in my frontal lobe. And I have to say that through my journey through sociology, because as an undergraduate major, my degree was in sociology and economics, I came to be able to understand what I call long-term, large-scale processes that have really shaped my history my personal biography and those of my friends, and we did not know it at the time. And you know, I reflect back on C. Wright Mills, a great sociologist. He got his PhD from University of Maryland, and he was a professor at Columbia for many years. And he said, you know, if you want to see your future, look at those around you. Look at where their life trajectory is taking them, and most likely that will tell you what your future will be.
Oh wow. Yeah, there's a famous quote that I like to quote is from the Honorable Louis Farrakhan that says that when men fall, don't laugh, watch. And it seems like when you were seeing what your peers were doing, you were looking at the outcome of their decisions. And just like history is a progress of decisions. It's not just it's one decision after the other, day to day, right? So we know that the sociology is the study of the development, structure, and functioning of society. Is it more of government, the study of government, or the structure of community, development of structure of community?
So let me pull back, my brother.
Yes.
This is when we talk about individual decisions, we have to be careful not to walk into that trick bag.
Okay.
Why do I say this? Again, going back to Mills. If one person is unemployed, then maybe we can make the argument that that person is unemployed because he or she's lazy. If 100,000 individuals are unemployed, does that explanation holds up?
No.
Maybe there's something going on that we don't see. It's like gravity. We don't see gravity, but it's there. You hit a wet floor and you slip. That's gravity asserting itself on you. Some may call it a weak force, but it's a force nevertheless. Right? That acts upon you. Now, as I've grown older, one of the things I've seen is what I call the flat earth explanation for things. Right? The flat earth explanation for things. Right? The simplistic explanation for things. That person don't like me, that's why they are always against me. Again, that may be true. But that person may not like you because he or she has an ideological perspective that identify you and people like you as being a threat. So despite the fact that the truth that you're talking is the truth, they're always against you. If you ever look at the and I won't call them conservative because these people are radicals. They're not conservative, they're radicals, they're extremists, they're zealots. It's either their way or no way. If you ever look at the approach they take, they don't apologize when they're wrong. They don't acknowledge that they're wrong. They always pass the blame to you or someone else. I fail because I'm unlucky. I fail because Black people, because affirmative action is taking my slot. It's always something external. And it's like Orwell said, George Orwell, he said, when you look at people who defend the indefensible, they use euphemisms because they can't use language that identify what is actually taking place. Because when they do that, they're telling the truth. Right? So the genocide of a community becomes pacification or relocation or gentrification. But these are real life people who are being impacted by a force that is external to them, that is imposing itself on them in their communities because they want to remove them from their communities. Right? So I always say, be very careful when we start looking at decisions, because oftentimes, whether you realize it or not, you think you may be making decision, but that decision had been made for you because the structures that you've been placed
in front of you. Yeah. So
This
basically, you're
is-
saying there's a nuance behind every decision.
no, there's no nuance, my brother. I'm saying to you that we live within a physical world.
Yes.
For hundreds, if not thousands of years, the people from Europe was cut off from indigenous peoples here in what we call the Americas,
Yes.
right? And when we talk about the Americas, that is a label that's been imposed on them. They did not look at themselves as being American,
They were
or
different
being
things.
Americans, right? This is something that's been imposed on them through conquest, colonization, and genocide. But here again, we go back to Orwell and his experience in India. We always have to use language to hide what is actually taking place in front of us. Because you know what? It is ugly.
Yeah.
It is ugly. I remember many years ago, I remember watching this movie, The Deer Hunter. Right? It's a movie that was set in the Vietnam era. And these guys, I believe in Pennsylvania, these are hunting fish and all this stuff. And it was just the start of the Vietnam conflict, and they were in a bar, and a military person came in, and he was destroyed. And the propaganda that these guys were being told about, we're going to go over there and kill off these people who are fighting for their freedom, you know, right? And they couldn't understand why he was acting the way that he was acting. If you ever have a chance, just look at The Deer Hunter.
I will.
The Deer Hunter, right? I believe it won a couple of Academy Awards.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you're bringing up history, man, because I'm a student of history. And
Yeah.
I know that sociology is the study of society. And I know that there's been different societies throughout history. The first society was hunting and gathering. And then when technology came into play and agriculture came into play, we came into civilization. How does history play a part in sociology?
History undergirds sociology. And unfortunately, again, the education that I've had and the being accidentally, or maybe the ancestors, God just sending me where he sent or where she sent me, I came across a number of scholars who did not accept on face value what all of us have been taught. We talk about hunter-gatherers. Okay, I mean, hunter-gatherers are a small band of people who were nomadic. They move, they follow their food, right? And then with the domestication of animals, and we have now agriculture, and we have settled communities where people don't have to follow their food; they grow their food, right? They domesticate their food, so they start to give some routine to their existence, which the hunter-gatherers had a routine, but that routine was very different from those people who became settled. Right?
The sedentary lifestyle versus the hunting and gathering, nomadic, moving around lifestyle.
And as I wrote an article, and I hope it gets published, talk about, human beings, I don't care where you find us, and I don't care how you label us. We love security. We love regularity. We love norms. Despite the fact that some of us say we love excitement, and when the excitement gets too crazy, we're like, you know what? I'm going to dial it back. I'm going home, and I don't want to be a part of this no more because I don't want anything bad to happen to me. Right? That's imprinted in our DNAs.
Is that a survival mechanism?
It is.
Yeah. Okay.
It's usually the bull will get eaten first. It's the cowards who fall back and survive.
That's
right?
true.
I mean, it's imprinted in our DNA just like gravity.
Yeah.
But But if you listen to all these pundits talk, they talk about race as if it's something that is unchanging. The black race. And now everybody's a race. Every subcategory is a race, right? But if we look at it historically, we find that how we deal with race is something that's relatively new. And by new, I'm talking about from the 15th century forward. When we talk about modernity. And when we talk about modernity, we're talking about a period within which many of the things that we now take for granted began to manifest themselves in the 1500s. One of my professors taught me this period is what they call the long 16th century.
Okay.
So we start to see the rise of large-scale cities. We start to see the rise of commerce. We start to see the growth in regional economies. We start to see capitalism as a historical system replacing what was once dominant world empires or empires, right? And despite the fact that when I went to school, and I'm quite sure when you went to school, they taught us about the Spanish Empire, the Dutch Empire,
mercantilism,
and the French Empire.
Yep.
The fact is that they were part of a process that now when we look around the world and we talk about globalization, that was the start, the genesis of that process.
Yep. I always tell my students that when we look at African American history, it starts really with Christopher Columbus in 1492 when he took that boat and he crossed the Atlantic Ocean and arrived here. That started the chain of events that got us here in this side of the world.
Yeah, and another part of it you must remember is that the Ottomans conquered was a force in the East.
Yes, they were.
For them to get to the spice and the riches of the Orient, they could not go through the Ottoman Empire. It was too strong.
It was Muslim too. It was a beef between the Muslims and the Christians at that time.
Yeah,
too.
but I mean, the Ottomans are Muslims, and with the collapse of the Ottoman Empire after World War I, we now look at its core, which is Turkey, which is a Muslim, which is an Islamic country, secular, and people put a lot of weight into that. And as I tell my students, these processes are very complex. They're convoluted. And they give us the sense that history repeats itself. No, history don't repeat itself.
It rhymes.
It runs, and you know what? As Bordell and the Annell School, which were a group of historians in the early part of the 20th century, who looked at history differently from traditional history. We're not from rake. We just report the facts. They saw that the facts could be interpreted. The facts could be manipulated. The facts could be reconstructed, right? But what cannot be, but one thing we can't get around, just like we can't get around gravity, is the material world within which we live. So when I try to tell my students about this, someone say, Dr. Brown, this is too much. I just want to get an A, man. And he's just going too far. And again, it comes back to the complexity. When we talk about African Americans, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue, the category, the social construction of African Americans did not exist.
No, it didn't.
Right? I forget the brother Blassingame. He wrote a number of influential books. Anyway, he talks about African traditions, and one of the things that really caught my attention was it Blassingame or was someone Stuckey. I think it was Stuckey. Don't quote me on his first name, Stuckey. He said, and what I gleaned from that, what created the African Americans as a unique social construction was the common terror. When you experienced police brutality, that's the common terror that George Floyd experienced, that Breonna experienced, that so many African American experience. And then they come along and tell us it's, you're trying to politicize and racialize stuff. We're not. It's a part of our experience that we know as normal. But for them who have not been a part of that experience, for them who could drive through a community, like, I remember watching Dave Chappelle, right? When he's doing that short skit, the show.
Yeah.
And he's, there's a skit where, the cop pulled up and Dave Chappelle is like, hide the weed, hide the weed.
Yeah.
And the white guy in the car was like, nah, you're not hiding the weed, I'm just smoking the weed. For them, police brutality is not a part of their normative experience. For us, it is. For us, I remember many years ago, my mother telling me, Junior, if the cops pull you over, be very respectful. I'm like, But then I had to reflect back, growing up in Suffolk County, walking my friends, and their finest rolled up on us and told us, you niggas better get home before we lock you up. And having the experience of going through the American criminal justice system where the defendants are black and brown and the judges, the court officers, and so on and so forth are predominantly white. And having the experience of bringing my youngest son upstate to one of these liberal arts colleges on a college tour, and the professors, the vast majority of the professors and administrators are white. But walking into that cafeteria and all of the faces serving white folks are black. Or back in the 90s, I gave a paper in New Orleans, and this black woman walked into the session, and she was hot. She said a white couple came up to me and gave me their bags and told me to bring the bags up to their room. She's like, I don't work here. And we see it now in terms of all these videos of what they call Karens and all that, who feel that the space that they populate is not a space that people that look like you and me belong in, because they don't see it as a part of their normal reality. Or when I say to my wife, I see black folks on doing commercials talking. I'm like, I don't know any black folks that talk like that. I don't know I've seen black folks act like that, right? But that's not a part of my regular experience. But that's what they pump into our psyche. And after a while, in the back of our operating system, these become our expectations.
Being programmed.
I mean, we could unprogram ourselves, but the thing is, how do we make ourselves conscious of it? And you are on the front line. And here I say, brother, being an educator is so important. But my experience as being an educator is that we are under-resourced, we're overstressed, our infrastructure is crumbling, right? And as soon as we start showing signs of being successful, here come the okie doke. Right, here come the okie doke. So the work that you're doing, brother, is God's work. God's work. And I was looking at these Mothers for Liberty. I have come to know this, and we see it in the Bible. And Jesus lived that life. He didn't just speak about it, he lived that life. He took care of those who could not take care of themselves. But he was 100, He was 100. And these people want to teach us that some people are better than others. No, They want to create an environment where we serve and supposed to adore them, while they put the boot and while they put their knees on our necks,
Yeah.
and we're not supposed to say anything.
Can you explain social constructs? Because I know that social constructs is basically they placed people of color under the category of black, and they're using the category of black to restrict, like you said, resources, education, to commit redlining. Can you explain that?
I tell you this, brother. We are our original people. We
Yeah.
are the original people, right? We are the original people, and I've had the opportunity, thanks to Dr. Oh my gosh. Now let me say this. I understand this whole idea about social constructs, and I do understand about these subcategories. If I could, my approach to explanation is one that is rooted very deeply in the spiritual and the material. And for me, I don't see any contradiction, I don't see those things as being a dichotomy on opposite side of the pole. I see them as being opposite side of a single coin. What do I mean by this is that in order for one to exist, both must exist.
Mm.
So when I hear about social construct, I mean that's, I think Benedict Anderson, captured it when he said imagine, and that when we talk about social construct, we can look at it as being imagined, because we live in a physical world.
Yeah.
Right? I can't imagine you because you occupy space. Right? At least we occupy space for a certain amount of time, the way we are. But then when we pass away, we're going to occupy we're going to occupy space also, but not the way we occupy space right now.
That's true. We transfer, energy transfers.
Of course. Right?
Mm.
Matters, you can't destroy matter.
Can't
alter it, but yeah. So when I hear these things again, my brother, I'm skeptical, and I don't try to say it's wrong, because you have a piece of reality that I may not be in touch with.
Mm.
But one of brother I grew up with, he said to me, "Why believe when you could know?" Just before I went off to college, why believe when you could know?
When you can know.
I hear people say about, I believe in God. I know there's a God. That's the spiritual side of it, right? Some people talk about ancestors as if, they're dead. The ancestors is always with us. I know.
They're not genes. They're not DNA.
Yeah, I know. There's times, bro, when in my life, man, when I could not see a way, and somehow God sent me a way. Right? I can talk about it being 1 + 1 = 2,
Yeah.
or make a prediction about how things are going to turn out. There's times in my life, bro, I said, man, I don't know how this is going to turn out.
Yeah.
So that's the spiritual side that my grandmother taught me a long time ago. And she also taught me about the ugly side of people that say they love you, but the things that they do to you is not a reflection of their love. And in the context, my grandmother, she got put out, and she's in the park bench crying with her suitcases, right? And a woman who's a total stranger came up to her and asked her, "Why are you crying?" And my grandmother shared with her burden. And you know what this woman did? Took one of her suitcases, and my grandmother grabbed the others and brought her to her home and put my grandmother up.
Oh,
right? And I say this in the context of, I hear about, the progressive and the liberals and this immigrant or migrant problem. The fact is, a lot of people who are progressive will say this is wrong, the government needs to do blah, blah, blah. But something, if this is something you feel strongly about, create a space in your home for those people to stay.
yeah.
That's where the rubber meets the road. And as I look around and look at the politics, is that it's about a whole bunch of tricks and hijinks. When Jordan brought his circus to New York to embarrass the Manhattan DA because he had indicted Trump, that's all they do. And what they call is cultural, woke. These are people's lives who have been excluded. And they're trying to say that, no, you're the problem, not us. Du Bois talked about the color line at the start of the 20th century. It's still with us. And we still use the language of the oppressors to define who we are. So now they got us in little buckets. Right? I'm black, people of color, and okay. And everyone believes now that, hey, my issue is important. I go back to Gil Scott Heron. He said, in one of his poems, he said, "What's my equivalent to you? I just want a wife and a kid and a job that could take care of my family. You're checking out for 4 years, but you can always go back to your home."
Yeah.
You got that option, bro.
Yeah.
And they want to make sure we don't have that option. And it takes me to this issue of gentrification, because we talk about these issues as if they're discrete, as if we have different components of our lives that don't overlap. Gentrification is about using the market to bludgeon people that look like you and me. So we can't afford a place to stay. We can't take care of our families. And then we feel bad about ourselves because, I can't take care of my children because I don't have a job. And it brings me back to the affirmative action. Bring me back to W.E.B. Du Bois, a scholar, a gentleman who they try to beat down and grind into ashes. Right? When you took Sociology 101, one of the things I did not teach you and many of my students early on was that Du Bois, you learn about the Chicago School of Sociology, you learn about Columbia School of Sociology. What Du Bois was doing in Atlanta precedes those schools by 20 years.
Mm.
The methodology that he used, go and read, is Philadelphia Negro, a social studies, cutting edge, that was published in 1899. When he went to the University of Pennsylvania, they treated him like he was dirt when he's conducting the study. And even today, you will see that he's being disappeared from the canons. So I was listening to one of my colleagues share with me, Jill Scott's reconstruction of the national anthem, or when she speaks about we being erased. We are being erased. Land of the slave. Many of our young people don't know about Mary Terrell Church, who talked about lift as we climb. She was a contemporary of W.E.B. Du Bois, one of the first, if not the first, African American to receive a bachelor's degree at a college here in the United States. Right? So the book I'm writing about is about, and as I state very clearly in the book, women will not be preceded by the hyphen black. Because Women are women. Why is a privileged place being given to white women who are European colonial settlers? That's who they are. But now they're Americans. So all the evils that have been done to grind the indigenous people, and I don't call them Native Americans, indigenous people, because they were not a monolithic group. All of us been washed away when we talk about Americans. And I'm not saying that I am not patriotic. I'm very patriotic, but the truth has to be told.
That's true.
And when we look at what Abbott is doing down in Texas, DeSantis is doing, and what's going on in Georgia and all these red states, they want to make sure that we're not at the table. And if we're at the table, we're serving them. So this attack on what they call affirmative action, go back again to Du Bois. Stop your whining, stop your complaining, right? And get to the hard work. Because the hard work that we do, we won't need the civil rights laws. We won't.
Yeah.
Because the amazing thing we must understand, and I again go back to my Professor Wallerstein, Giovanni Arrighi, and Ali Mazruri. They taught me to understand is that you can't look at an issue in the short term. You have to look at those issues over 100, 200, 300, 400 period, right? Look at the civil rights legislation that was passed, that was rescinded back in the 1800s, late 1800s, and then this place Jim Crow. Right after the victory of the Civil War, where Black folks thought that we are free. It was erased in a generation.
Yeah.
Now they come in with this okie doke, and I hear folks, saying, "Well, these people were used as a pawn." No, go back to Du Bois. Stop whining. We have a lot of resources in our communities, and our schools should be about excellence, not Black excellence, but excellence.
That's true. Well, you mentioned affirmative action, and first of all, what is affirmative action, and why do you think there was a lack of outrage because of the dismissal of affirmative action by the Supreme Court judge?